Welcome to a brand new episode of the Bold Take Podcast. I'm Austin Hill. With me, as always, is Austin Waiter, and today we welcome you to a very special, hopefully very fast episode of the Bold Take Podcast. Um, Look, let's just get right to it with the college football action. It was a very exciting weekend, and let's start with really the probably the big headline from this past weekend, and that's Georgia Tech coming in and taking down the number 4 Miami Hurricanes. Look, nothing lasts forever. And the miracle run that was Miami scraping by every single ACC opponent they played. It's over now. And look, it was bound to happen. I picked Georgia Tech to cover in this game, which basically means you should have bet money line for Georgia Tech to win this game. Uh, it's happened a lot this season when I've picked a team to cover a spread against a favorite. But look, let's just put it plain and simple. Miami had the slow start that they've had all year, and they just couldn't pull it out at the end. And look, no fault of Cam Ward's own. He had a pretty fantastic game. I know he had the scoop and the it wasn't a scoop and score, but the late strip sack is what I was trying to think of. That really cost them. But without Cam Ward, they would have never been in this game to begin with. Just an unfortunate circumstance. They just really got beat by a team that knows how to control the clock and control the tempo.
Yeah, first of all, RIP to the undefeated Miami Hurricane podcast. It was a good run. It lasted, I'm not gonna lie, probably 6 or 7 more weeks than I thought it would last. It was a good run. I hope the Cam Ward Heisman hopes are not completely dead because I would really like that to still be right, but you make no promises. But I mean, you said it straight on the point. Miami got off to a slow start offensively. They couldn't, or offensively and defensively. Georgia Tech was just going up and down the field on them and taking a lot of time too. They were very effective in the time of possession. And the thing we both said last week was the question mark around Haynes King in this game. And if he plays, then this could be really interesting. If he doesn't, we don't know what to expect. He went out and played. He did his job well. He went out and played well with the few passes they asked him. I think he only finished with what, 30 yards passing, something like that. But no, this was just controlled on the ground by Georgia Tech the whole way. And I'm not going to lie to you. Whenever it was 28-16, when Miami scored that touchdown to make it 28-23, I said, God, this is setting up for the ACC officials to
Yeah.
get them another win. I don't want it to happen again, but at the same time, we need to keep the Miami podcast alive. But no, nonetheless, Georgia Tech was able to get the strip sack on Cam Ward and ultimately won them the game. Listen, the good news, if you're Miami, is everything's still in front of you. Everything's still in front of you. You could afford the one loss. You're tied with SMU at the top. You really don't have any other tough games left on your schedule that you should be able to win out. Make the ACC title game and you win that, you're in still. So there's no real reason to panic overall if you're Miami. It just the luck ran out for you. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. Real quickly, I wanted to pose the interesting thought of, this was a loss that really, while Miami could afford it, it makes the situation certainly interesting. If now the ACC champ, look, it would still take at least one more loss for it to happen. If the ACC champ ends up being a two-loss team,
Yeah,
Boise State get this bye
yeah, they
in the
jump
first
ahead
round.
of them. Yeah,
Well, I mean, here's the thing: the committee would still decide based on their rankings. It'd be the four highest ranked conference champions. So in theory, you would think they'd rank Boise State ahead of a two-loss champ if Boise State also wins their conference. But who knows? But I certainly think it's a question that begs being asked, especially when we talk about it right now. Boise State's one loss is the best loss you could have in college football right now.
yeah. Losing by 3 points on a walk-off field goal on the road against the number one team in the country. Yeah, pretty good loss to say the least there. But not only them, keep in mind BYU, which I'm sure we will talk about the dramatics of what happened in Provo, Utah this weekend. But nonetheless, they're really still not ranked that high or that much ahead of Boise State. So you wonder if that happens, could Boise State if they win out and BYU loses a game in Miami or SMU, who knows if they lose another game or it's a two-loss champion, does Boise State jump up to that 3 seed then?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think that's a possibility. I don't know if it will happen, but I think it's very much a possibility we got to discuss, especially if Boise State wins out. I mean, it's a great argument to have, and they rightfully deserve it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And then look, we take a look at we take a look at a bounce back slot for Clemson. And look, they get the job done 24-14. This game didn't start out in their favor, but look, they came through and they got the job done at the end. It wasn't a pretty game, but look, they once again kind of showed their abilities. And Phil Moffa really carried the load for this team. A guy we haven't talked about a lot this year, but 128 yards. I know it was 26 carries, no touchdowns. But look, he kind of kept this team alive when they needed it, and they got the job done in close but easy fashion against Virginia Tech.
Hey, they won on the road at Virginia Tech. I mean, that's tough to do. That's just tough to do in general. But no, I mean, the credit to Clemson, they got the bounce back opportunity. And now, I mean, all they need, like I said, all they need is for Miami to lose one more game down the stretch here, and they went out. They're going to make that ACC championship because they only have the one loss in conference play. So, but Miami right now, I still think would be in the driver's seat ahead of them. They would need Miami to lose another game, but trying to keep up with them at the top there. And for Virginia Tech, again, it's just another disappointing close performance for them. Again, that's been the story of the season because I was high on them entering the preseason. I don't remember how high you were on them, but I was very high on them in the preseason.
Yeah, I was intrigued by the fact that they had returned like all of their starters, but I didn't exactly know where that would end up.
Yeah. They should have known with the week one loss to Vandy. I mean, that was the tell of it. Credit to Vandy. I mean, don't I'm not trying to say Vandy's bad because they're bowl eligible, but with the game like that happened in week one, you could kind of sense what was going to happen there.
Yeah. Then in another bounce back spot, we had Iowa State fall to Kansas on the road. And look, this has just been another unfortunate aspect of this season. Iowa State really just can't find their footing right now. They're kind of spiraling after this loss. And look, I say it's unfortunate really on both ends because this is how good this Kansas team can be when they're playing at their best. Look, 50% completion percentage, not the greatest from Jalen Daniels, but 295 yards, two touchdowns. Devin Neal, 19 touches for 111 yards, two touchdowns. This was an unreal game from a Kansas team, and this is exactly what we expected from Kansas this season. Just wish we had been able to see this in, I don't know, the first 8 games of the season.
Yeah, I mean that's fair, but also I mean, I mentioned it last week. 5 of their 6 losses were one score games, so that I mean this was a proof of it. Another game where they could go out and dominate, and you wonder if they could have been able to finish out those close games against Kansas State, Illinois, UNLV, West Virginia, Arizona State. I could go on and on for a bit there. But nonetheless, if you look at it, they wonder if they finish those games, you wonder where this season could be at. Um, and I mean, you look at it now for the Big 12 after all the chaos and stuff, it is setting up for BYU Colorado. It's there. All those two teams got to do is win out. That's your Big 12 championship for this.
Yep.
So I'm not going to officially rule that as it because I've seen this Big 12 break into chaos a million times before. I'm far from being a wise man to do that, but this Big 12 is setting up for a chance for a BYU or a Colorado to get into the playoff for the first time ever. So it could be exciting in that Big 12 title game. But for Iowa State, yeah, it sucks. Back-to-back losses. And it looks bad, this one this week. But when you look at the Kansas team, if you actually look at how they played this year, they played a good team. They just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, agreed. Then Ole Miss really controls the ball game against the Georgia Bulldogs. 28-10 victory. Keeps them well alive, not only in the college football playoff, but in the SEC. And look, here's the thing. I got to give hats off to this Ole Miss team. Look, when they took that second loss, you had guys come out, heads down. But Jackson Dart came out and said, that's it. We can't make any more mistakes. He didn't make excuses. He didn't talk, he didn't blame anybody. He came out and said, that's it. We can't make any more mistakes. And credit to this team, they have not made any more mistakes so far. The season's not over. Two more games left down the stretch here. But look, I'm just so impressed that this team came out and said no more. Look, they could have hung their heads and called this season. They could have said, we have no more chances. It's over. We've got Texas. We've got Georgia at the top of this SEC. We cannot compete. They didn't. They got out there. They said no more excuses, no more mistakes. And so far, they've lived up to it. Absolutely impressive stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. We both said, listen, going through the transfer portal, the transfer portal moves by Lane Kiffin were made to win games like this. They went out and upgraded that defensive line massively in the transfer portal, and it absolutely paid dividends in this game against Georgia. Their defensive line was absolutely incredible. They caused pressure to Carson Beck all day. Didn't let that Georgia offense get going at all at any point during the game. And you mentioned it now with this whole Ole Miss and Georgia and just how wide open this SEC is this year. I mean, it's ridiculous because now, obviously, we'll get to it in a little bit. Georgia dropped significantly. Ole Miss is now back fully into the playoff picture. It's just all over the place, but Ole Miss really controlled this game from the get-go. They dominated. They handled it. Even when Jackson Dart got hurt, everything went fine for them. So it was a really great performance by Ole Miss to handle it. And Georgia, I can no longer say that they're inevitable because they have finally lost to someone
Yep.
who is not named Alabama. I don't know what to do right now.
Yeah, absolutely just flabbergasting, unbelievable performance. I was
But the under did hit. The under did hit for my bet of the week. I just want to point that out. Sorry.
that's what you love to see. And then Alabama really annihilated LSU. This was a phenomenal performance by the Crimson Tide. 42-13 final score. All but does it for LSU's college football playoff hopes. In my eyes, three losses, an absolute beatdown from Alabama now. Look, it's going to be tough sledding in the ACC or in the SEC and the college football playoff for LSU, but Alabama, another team that's put themselves in the right spot to keep themselves alive and make these last two games of the college football season very interesting.
Wow. I mean, listen, of all the outcomes I thought of this game, I thought Alabama could go in and win it. I thought they had a chance, maybe. 42-13 was not what I was expecting at all. This was complete another domination. Jalen Milroe was incredible. It just seems, and this is the Marcel Reed thing when when LSU played them, scrambling quarterbacks seem to be LSU's kryptonite this year. I mean, holy cow. They can't stop a scrambling quarterback, which makes me wonder with DJ
Yeah.
Lagway playing for Florida this weekend, does Florida have an advantage against this LSU defense? I really don't know at this point, but no, Bama just dominated the game. And you looked at it, we talked about it for weeks about this Bama team since the win against Georgia and that loss to Vandy and Tennessee. They just haven't looked like a good football team. They haven't looked good offensively. The defense has struggled at points and really had mainly done the carrying. This week, this was their best performance of the year, and that includes the Georgia game. And this was their best performance of the year, going into a tough environment, a place where Brian Kelly had won every single night game since he was there. I think it's 14-0 or 15-0 entering that game, and they just flat out dominated them. So my respect levels go up a little bit towards Bama. I know I was harsh on the last couple of weeks, but you go into Death Valley and win a night, you earn my respect. It's pretty simple as that.
Then we've got Virginia knocks off number 18 Pitt 24-19. And look, this was another team that had a chance to have a big bounce back week, and they just couldn't come through. Pitt Panthers now sit at an interesting spot coming into their matchup next week.
Yeah, I'm just happy for Virginia. I mean, this was a team that was really young last year. I didn't know their Coach Elliott, their head coach, was going to get another chance, but they have played really good up to this point. A 5-4 record. They obviously got the big win there against them. Anthony Calandria has looked really good in his sophomore year. I'm glad they're still out there playing him at quarterback. So yeah, I'm just happy for Virginia there. Pitt, I mean, I'm disappointed. But look, Eli Holstein has been fighting injuries the last 2 to 3 weeks. And if your quarterback's not 100% and your backup goes out there and struggles throwing the ball, you're going to lose. I mean, it's just pure and simple as that. And that's why you got to wonder what happens when they play Clemson this weekend. If he's not 100%, this might be a butt whooping, and Clemson goes in there and dominates. So he's got to get healthy if Pitt wants any chance of finishing this season strong after a really good start.
I completely agree with you there. And now let's talk about a rivalry renewed. BYU and Utah finish a thriller 22-21. Look, if you love great jersey matchups, I was in love with this game. I would date the uniform matchup in this game. I'd probably marry it. I just cannot even I can't put into words how much I love this red on blue matchup. But look, I was sickened by the call that saved this game for BYU. Impressive drive that they put together to end up winning this game, but I was absolutely just. I think I and everybody else who stayed up like the sicko they were and watched this game was disgusted and stunned to see what happened. I saw it was fourth down. I saw the ball get thrown away, and I was like, all right, game over, right? Everybody's looking around. I was like, why would you throw the ball away there? And so they're going to give me this phantom timeout afterwards. No whistle blew beforehand. They played the snap, and then they threw the ball away looking for a timeout. How do you grant that in such a big spot? I couldn't believe it. I truly could not believe that call.
I mean, that's fair, but at the same time, that was the largest crowd ever to watch a game there in Utah. They confirmed it was the largest home crowd ever there for that game, and they were loud all night long. So it's hard for me to go one side or the other because, in all honesty, they might have called a timeout, but with it being a fourth down on the line in that big of a rivalry game, the crowd trying to be as loud as they can, they might have actually got called the timeout and the refs just didn't realize it until right then. So that was a whole situation there. And then obviously after the timeout, they sacked the quarterback for BYU. They get the holding penalty after on the fourth down, which it was holding. Let's just face it, it was. But you mentioned it. Credit to BYU for getting, for not just giving or going into deep passes after that penalty. They kept on going down the field, momentum, getting into field goal range and kicking the field goal to walk it off on the road in the biggest rivalry in the state of Utah, maybe in the Big 12 now with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State gone. But I'll be honest with you, this BYU team, I'm telling you, I said it a few weeks ago, they are giving me 2022 TCU vibes. This feels like a team of destiny. You think they're dead. There's no way they're going to win this game. They're absolutely done. And then somehow they pull magic out of their hat to win this game. It was incredible, especially like I said, with that environment and those fans there in Utah.
Yeah, it was something else. Let's get into this college football playoff ranking though. At number one, we've got Oregon. Number two, we've got Ohio State. Texas jumps up to three. Penn State up to four. Indiana up to five. BYU up to six. Tennessee up to seven. Tennessee stays at seven. Notre Dame up to eight. Miami dropping all the way down to nine. Alabama up to 10. Ole Miss now in the picture again at 11. And Georgia at 12. I like a lot of the movement. I think a lot of it was just and fair. The only thing I don't like is Boise State winning and falling out of the top 12. Look, I don't think Georgia deserves to be cut a break just because Boise State was 12. Sorry. Georgia's two loss. Sorry. Georgia lost to a lower ranked team. Sorry that Boise State won. I just don't see how any of that equates to Boise State having to drop down for Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you just want my honest opinion, I don't get why Georgia gets punished dropping down 10 spot or 9 spots for losing to a ranked Ole Miss, and yet Miami loses to unranked Georgia Tech and they only drop down 5 spots.
That's true.
I don't get the fairness there, and that's coming from someone who has said this is a Miami Hurricane podcast, and even I don't get the fairness there in dropping Georgia. But even I'll be honest, even with the Boise State Georgia controversy, it doesn't matter because the way the bracket would set up, Georgia would be left out and Boise State would be in that 12 spot. So either way, Georgia's out of that playoff bracket if it were to end up today. Yeah, because my Oregon be the 1 seed, Texas the 2, BYU the 3, Miami the 4 seed, and then 5 Ohio State would play 12 Boise State. Number 8 Tennessee would host or 8 seed Tennessee would host 9 seed Notre Dame. 6 seed Penn State will host 11 seed Ole Miss, and my personal favorite out of all of them, number 7 Indiana would be hosting Alabama in the first round of the college football playoff. If
That'd
it
be
ended right
insane.
now,
That'd
that
be
is the greatest thing I have ever heard of. To think before this season, you're telling me that we have a chance to see Indiana host a playoff game against Alabama? Are you kidding me? This is a fever dream right here. But I mean, even with that controversy about Georgia and Boise State would be in. Georgia would be the first team out of the playoff if it were for today, if it were to start today. So I get the worry about it, but with the way the bracket worked out, it ultimately would not be the biggest deal in the world.
Yeah, I understand. I get that. My big thing is just that I think it's my bigger issue is that it's a faulted logic in ranking, just in general. I just don't think that it's a fair way to look at the rankings and to look at the way things set up and say, oh yeah, this team should move down, especially when you're just doing it to keep Georgia ranked in the top 12.
Well, to be fair, I mean that, like I said, I made my point clear. I don't think Georgia should have dropped down 9 spots due to this. I think you could have dropped Miami down maybe to where Georgia was at or something along those lines. Um, but I mean, still, I get the worry with it. But if you're Boise State at the end of the day, you say the highest ranked Group of 5 team, it does not matter.
Yeah, as far as the rest of the top 25, for now, we're just going to leave it up in the air. I'm not worried about covering every last inch of it. We've gotten the most important aspect of it, I think,
Yeah.
in those
Shout
college.
out to some of those teams for climbing up though, 2 lanes in the rankings now.
Absolutely.
Army got their bye week before they play Notre Dame. I mean, yeah, we're getting there, Austin. That's going to be a fun matchup there.
Yeah.
South Carolina entered the rankings, so that was a good thing. And other teams just continue to climb. Were the main things I saw. I'm loving Washington State. Washington State's one that's kind of sneaking around at 18 that I don't think anyone's paying attention to, if you want my honest opinion. Only lost one game to Boise State. They're at 18. You got Colorado, Kansas State, A&M, and SMU in front of you. Those are some teams you wonder one or two losses go their way. You're talking about Washington State entering the conversation for that last at-large spot.
Yeah, that could certainly be an interesting scene and an interesting situation to look at. Um, but let's get to our team and player of the week. At number 5 for my team of the week, I had Virginia. Really impressive performance to go out there and get a win against a team in the ACC who was at the top for a while and now kind of reeling. Way to take advantage and get yourself another win. At 4, I went with Alabama. This was a true stomping of LSU. They looked better, and I was just very, very impressed with the way they were able to execute. At number 3, I went with Ole Miss. Good, gritty win against a team keeping themselves sharp and alive in the college football playoff in the SEC. At number 2, I went with Kansas. This is the Kansas team that I really wish we had been able to see all season, executing at a high level, not turning the ball over, and winning these close games. And then at number 1, I had to go with the obvious. Georgia Tech upsets Miami. This was an unbelievable performance, and it's why we love college football.
Yeah, I guess whatever. Yeah, for my teams of the week, so number 5 for me, I have the BYU Cougars. They were clearing away the getting that gutsy win against Utah was really impressive to me, especially going all the way to get down field goal range and hit the walk-off winner in that environment. Had to show them some love. Number 4, I went with Kansas as well. Kansas, like we've said, is a good football team. They just haven't been able to finish games out. They were able to finish this one out to get the win. Number 3, I put Georgia Tech here. A very impressive win against Miami, nonetheless. You talked about it. Number 2, I got Ole Miss. I was tempted to put them at number 1, but I managed to do some thinking in my mind, put them at number 2. Good win for them. They had control of that game the whole way. Defensive line was incredible in that game. That won them the football game. And then number 1, I had to put Alabama. because, as you all know, the respect I have for going and playing at Death Valley at night. There's only one man I've ever seen go into Death Valley at night and win. That's an Alabama led by Nick Saban. So I'll just be honest, I had no faith in Kalen DeBoer led Alabama going out there and winning this game on the road. I just didn't see it
Yeah.
happening at all there. So absolutely had to put Alabama as my number one team for our team of the week.
You love to see it. And look, when we go back to the polls, we've got Ole Miss collecting a win. We've got Georgia Tech collecting a win on the polls. And look, all that comes down to shaking out. We've got Georgia Tech as our team of the week. And look, this makes sense. This was a big win, truly shocking the nation and sending shockwaves. I mean, we're talking about it just a few weeks before we really get this final college football playoff picture, sending really a shockwave through college football. Um, and we'll see. The effects obviously could still be built on as the season goes on.
Yeah,
But a
it's
big
very
win.
true. Very true. Yeah, very true for them. Yet another team. This is the have did they win it in week 0 when they beat Florida State?
Yes.
They did? Okay, that's what I thought. So yeah, happy for Georgia Tech again to get that. So even though I'm butthurt or whatever about my Miami undefeated season run ending there. Um, yeah, but nonetheless, I'm cool with it. I'm cool. I'm happy for Georgia Tech. They've been a fun team ever since they made that move for Brent Key to be the full-time coach.
Yeah, just interesting. And look, they shook up the college football playoff picture in week 0, and they continue to shake it up in the latest week of college football. Uh, then we've got our players of the week, and I'll start with mine. At number 5, I went with Jalen Daniels. Look, it wasn't the flashiest performance, but it was a big game in a big spot. I was very impressed with the performance. At number 4, I went with Zion Young, the defensive end from Mizzou. Look, this is the guy that scoops up the game-winning scoop and score touchdown. Unbelievable effort by the Mizzou Tigers to get the job done at the end. At number 3, I went with Riley Leonard. I know they were playing Florida State, but this was like the big, flashy game that we've kind of been waiting for Riley Leonard. He's had a lot of good running games, a lot of good throwing games, but this was one where he racked up these statistics, the yards, the touchdowns, throwing, running. It was really an unreal performance in a big game where, look, obviously Florida State hasn't been the team we thought they were going to be, but I just worry about a lot of these teams who have high hopes for the season matching up against Florida State. They still have unreal talent on that roster, and especially even more with it being my team, was worried that they'd find a way to mess it up, but they get the job done, win a big one against Florida State. At number 2, I went with Ashton Genty. It's been a while since he's been in the Player of the Week, so I threw him up here because he had another 200-plus yard game, 3 rushing touchdowns, had to show him love and had to remind everybody that he's still that guy. But at number 1, I went with Quinn Ewers, who decided to put up the stupidest stat line in the history of college football with unreal passing yards, unreal passing touchdowns, and a win over Florida.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie to you. Not even close to really matching on any of ours. So that makes this interesting to say the least. So my number 5, linebacker from UCLA, Carson Swearinger. He had 2 interceptions on Friday night against Iowa. UCLA, they're 4-5, which I'll be honest with you, 4-5 for them right now is way better than I pictured. I pictured them getting 2 or 3 wins maybe this year. So I had to show him some love. Number 4 on here, I got to give love to group of 5 quarterback Skylar Locklear. Absolutely incredible performance for UTEP this past week in their win. Over 300 yards, multiple touchdowns. Yeah, he was absolutely incredible in their overtime win. I believe it went to overtime against Kennesaw State. But yeah, he was absolutely incredible. 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Yeah, I had to give him some love. Number 3, here you go. We got one. Kyle Robichaud. I think it's how you pronounce the name. I am probably completely wrong on that. I will be honest with you. Nonetheless, though, he was a great performance for Boston College. 198 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. They had 65 total passing yards in the game. So he was their offense in this game, and he carried them to a win over Syracuse, really getting them a good job there. Number 3, Or not, no, that was number three. Number two, I know we haven't done overall non-player one for this in a while, but if any of them was going to win it, it'd be this. I had to give love to the entire Ole Miss defensive line, absolutely dominating this game against Georgia. I mean, I'll just go through the stats with some of it. 2 sacks for Jared Ivey there. You got 2 sacks for Princely. Not even going to attempt the last name there. I attempted the other ones. You're not catching me with that one. Multiple sacks from Perkins, multiple tackles for loss, tackles and assisted. I mean, they just flat out dominated this game. Multiple forced fumbles too. And then number one had to go with a fan favorite of ours since we saw him in person run for 70 yards against Arkansas 2 years ago. Had to go with Jalen Milroe. Absolutely incredible on the ground against LSU. I mean, he just ran away from them. He ran over them. You name it, he did it against this
Yeah,
LSU defense and humiliated them in Death Valley in front of everyone on national television.
absolutely. When we look at the polls, we've entered an interesting situation, one we haven't come across in a while. But it's all fun and games. Nobody gets hurt. But Ashton Genty and the entire Ole Miss defensive line collected wins this week, which means we have a tie in points. So our co-players of the week are Ole Miss's entire defensive line and Ashton Genty, the Heisman favorite in my eyes.
Okay. And I think it should be in everyone's eyes. Let's just get
Yeah,
that fact straight there. But yeah, no, it's great for them. It's absolutely great. Uh, we haven't had a co-winners in a while, nonetheless a non-player one. So yeah, it's good to
yeah,
see kind of it being spread out and getting more love once again here.
absolutely. Let's talk these game picks for this upcoming week. Look, let's start with the game. Not exactly two ranked teams going head to head, but still a big game to watch in the ACC. Number 20 Clemson goes on the road to face the Pitt Panthers. And look, this is a big spot here. This is a battle to potentially stay relevant in this ACC. You know, one slip up from one of these top teams, and they could be right back in it. Who you got?
Yeah. Uh, Listen, if Eli Holstein was 100% guaranteed to be playing for Pitt, I'd pick them absolutely. And I do join you in the hatred for Clemson. Don't get me wrong, but I'm gonna pick Clemson here. It's just I don't trust Pitt's offense if Eli Holstein's not playing in the game. That's my whole reasoning there. Other than that, I would pick Pitt, but him not being 100%, we've seen what that did to them whenever they played Virginia and SMU, let alone what's going to happen when they play Clemson.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. They've been playing rough. I think this is a big bounce back spot. I think at home, the defense comes alive. I think Pitt wins a close one against Clemson.
Hold on. Let me put my shocked face on that you picked against Clemson. Let me put my shocked face on.
I'd love to know the history of me picking against Clemson on this podcast. I've never.
If Eli Holstein was playing, I would hammer it with you, no doubt. But he's not. If he's not 100%, I can't do it. I can't do it.
That's fair. Then we've got number 21 South Carolina versus number 23 Missouri. Oh, look, two teams that have been playing some better football as of late. It could be an interesting matchup in the SEC. I don't know how much. I'm sure the standings probably aren't too much on the line. But hey, anything could happen. Who you got in this game between 21 and 23?
Well, let me just be frank. Even if he was playing, I would not pick them. But Brady Cook doubtful for Missouri entering this game. South Carolina, if I'm correct, has won their last 3 games by at least 3 touchdowns. South Carolina rolls. They roll over Mizzou, and Mizzou finally takes their sorry butts out of these rankings. I want them gone. They should not be here. It is like the Pittsburgh Steelers the last couple of years being the 7th seed in the playoffs. I don't know what you're doing here, and I want you gone. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to go with you on this one. I'm going to take South Carolina. Look, Missouri's defense found a way to get it done last week, but this is a much better team, a much more explosive offense, and Drew Pine is just not going to be able to keep up with Lenore Sellers. And finally, let's take a look at our last game pick here. You knew it was going to be here. SEC championship. Uh, let's just put it on the line. Probably it's on the line here. You got Tennessee, who's right now the top dog in the SEC, but Georgia on the outside looking in. A big win over Tennessee would put one of these two lost SEC schools back in the picture, I believe. So let's put it all out there. Who you got? Georgia, Tennessee.
Oh man. You know, obviously, again, I find it kind of awkward that we have quarterback questions in all our games. Nico had the concussion last week. I'm expecting him to go out there and play. Either way, I know that what I said about betting against Georgia maybe is not the official thing. They're at home on Saturday night in this rivalry game against Tennessee. They are going to humiliate Tennessee. I'm not saying they're just going to win. They are going to humiliate Tennessee in front of the national audience. They will win in a blowout. It will not even be close.
Yeah, if there's one thing Kirby Smart likes to do, it's generate a bunch of fake gossip around this team and get this team hyped up. He doesn't need all that. They've got a double digit beside their name for the first time in a while, and I know he doesn't like that. And I'm sure there are a bunch of people doubting and actually sleeping on this Georgia team. I'm with you. I think they come out and they humiliate this Tennessee team.
Absolutely.
Let's take it into our final category here, our bets of the week for college football. And why don't you kick it off for us? What do you got cooking?
So there was a couple I was wanting to choose. I didn't want to go with the obvious one of Georgia because I felt like that was way too obvious, but I will be playing Georgia. I think they're 9.5 point favorites right now. I don't know what. Yeah, 9.5 point favorite. I will be playing that, but that's not going to be my bet of the week. Instead, my bet of the week, there's a couple I am looking at here, but in the end, we are going to go with the Oregon Ducks minus 14 on the road at Wisconsin. I think Oregon goes in there and they destroy Wisconsin. Wisconsin, ever since they lost Tyler Van Dyke, they don't have an offense. Dan Lang and them have gone into tough environment after tough environment and humiliated teams, and they're going to do it to Wisconsin this weekend. They're going to go in there and destroy them.
I like it. I like it. My bet of the week that I'm cooking up. Look, I can't believe this spread is so big. I know it's Alabama. I know they're not playing a very a Division One FBS team here, but they're playing Mercer this late in the season. Mercer's 9-1. I like Mercer to cover plus 42.5.
I like that. I like that. We know you love a big spread, Austin. We know
Yeah,
you do.
I love it, and I think you're sleeping on Mercer here, and I will not tolerate it. They're 9-1. Let's put some
I was about to
respect.
say, I think I'm going to join you, honestly. I didn't realize they were 9-1 before until you said that. I might join you and place that bet on that game with them being 9-1.
So that's going to do it for us here at the Bold Take Podcast. Make sure you listen to the NFL episode. It comes out sometime after this episode. That's to be named later, if you will. But look, I know it was a quick episode. I know it wasn't the same old lengthy, in-depth dive. But look, a quick glance at the college football landscape. Uh, that's Austin Wader. I'm Austin Hill, and we want to thank you for listening.